Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. I'm Rishabh Gulati. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had, and let's take the deep dive on the difficult conversations, but need to be had. So we've been discussing Muslims and the Muslim vote and quotas. Now let's talk about the biggest thing that matters to a country, because otherwise all else is irrelevant, which is the economy and where it goes. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when Karl Marx landed up to study Victorian industrialized England, what was the premise of Das Kapital? The premise of Das Kapital was, and I'll explain it in 2 seconds to the best of my understanding, that in capitalism there are two components of a cost: raw materials and labor. In a profit-motivated system, where you want to maximize profit, you have to minimize cost. There is X you can do with raw material cost, so you want to minimize the cost of labor. In order to have labor working for you at next to nothing, for a pittance, there needs to be a mass of the impoverished who are so poor that they will be willing to work for you for a pittance. And therefore, capitalism perpetuates poverty. So we should create this idealized world in which everyone is equal. Okay? Now, in the application of it, was a global disaster. Why was it a global disaster? I'm sure everybody watching this telecast can now relate and understand this. When you're working in any environment, running a business, working in a firm, working in a factory, and you're working really hard, and you're making the maximum amount of effort, and you get paid the same, and the guy sitting next to you, regardless of he or she works, doesn't work, shows up, doesn't work, gets paid the same, what is your motivation? Okay? And that's where the ideological global divide took place. In India, it's a lot more complex. You would assume that the major national parties, the BJP and the Congress, both one who hosts liberalized finance minister Manmohan Singh as the former prime minister, and Narendra Modi, at least on economic policies, would agree. But now we have an economic ideological divide on two fronts. One is on jobs, because the Congress party says their first port of call, along with startups and others to be fair, but their first port of call is sarkari naukri, government jobs is what we are promising, and that's going to be what people are going to get hooked on to, not entrepreneurs necessarily, not businesses necessarily, not factories and software and job, but government naukri. They're latching onto that. And the second, they're saying that we are going to figure out a taxation system, because it's highly unfair. And this is Rahul Gandhi saying this, highly unfair, he says, that a rich tycoon and the ordinary man pays 18% tax in reference to GST on the same product. Now, how do you go about creating a system in which a rich tycoon buys a chocolate and pays maybe 5,000 rupees, and you and I go and buy a chocolate for 50 rupees? I don't know, because this is an unprecedented scenario. So where can you apply it? You can apply it in direct taxes. So what are we telling the tycoons of this country? Are we telling them, we don't want you? We don't want you to build the ports. We don't want you to build the software companies. We don't want you to build the airports. You need to all get out, okay? Or even worse, are we saying that the taxes are going to increase? The Congress says no, but what is then the taxation, progressive taxation plan? We don't know, because we've spent the past 2 decades, all of us, hoping that less corporate tax is better, less personal income tax is better, less tax overall is better. Is that the case or not? Let's open up this conversation. Priya Sehgal still with me, Sharad Kohli joining us on the broadcast. Let me also rope in Professor Madhav Nalapat into this broadcast, and Ajay Dua joining us as well. Professor Nalapat, let me begin with you. What have you understood of the taxation policy regime which is being recommended in the Congress manifesto and the commentary of their senior leaders?
It's not an unusual addition, for simple reason that when Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, the marginal rate of income tax was 97.25%. Practically the entire income was taken away. Now, as a consequence, what did we see? We saw people concealing their income, and we saw a huge amount of black money get accumulated. At the same time, the poor remained poor. And the incentive, for example, there was something called the Industries Development Regulation Act. According to the IDRA, if you produce more than your rated capacity, you are penalized. You could be prosecuted. Now, normally in a competitive economy, if a company produces more than the rated capacity, it should be encouraged. But here, they were going to be prosecuted. So I think what is happening is a return to the past. And from that point, and the betting is by the Congress party that this will be popular. It is a fact, Rishabh, that in many parts of the country, people look for a government job. You have lifetime security, you have a steady income coming in. So they look for a government job. The only problem is that government does not generate income on its own, it generates losses. So there is a huge private sector that is needed to support government. And when you focus only on the government, as for example, in the past, when the so called commanding heights of the Indian economy were held by the public sector, you see a very low rate of growth. So essentially, this is the problem. And may I point out that when jobs are created, let's say, for example, the Gulf countries want to invest heavily into India, they welcome Prime Minister Modi. These jobs are created for everybody. Everybody has got the qualifications. They're not going to exclude people of one religion or one region at all. They're going to include everybody.
Okay.
So unless you have a situation in which you have more jobs and a higher GDP and a growth rate, well, you're not going to get any benefit from the most redistributive of policies.
Okay.
You're in fact going to make the economy sink to the bottom.
Okay, it is very romantically idealistic, but then the definition of that is populism. Priya Saigal, why don't you come into this? Because it is out of a Bernie Sanders book, right? The 1%, they have all the wealth, the 1% need to be taxed, the 1% need to be taxed. Bernie Sanders, of course, kept on losing. It is very tempting to say the 1%, but when the subtlety comes in the details and not really commit to a plan. So why get into this into this taxation rigmarole? Because sure, people would like free fuel, but that's not good for the country, and people begin to understand that now.
I think, Rishad, part of the problem is that what Rahul Gandhi is saying is not what the rest of the party is saying. You know, he speaks and then the rest of the party is scrambling for an explanation. If you look at page 31 of the manifesto, I mean, you interviewed Jairam Ramesh today, I'm sure he must have also pointed that out.
Yes.
There is no, in the manifesto, it says that we are not going to be increasing any taxation.
Yeah, yes.
So that is very clearly said. Then why does Rahul Gandhi go and create these statements that add confusion and then everybody is scrambling for an explanation? We have Praveen Chakravarti, who wrote an editorial in the Indian Express today. We explained very clearly that by redistribution, he is talking about the socio-economic, equality or whatever. But he is going to be not taking away from the rich, but redistributing, maybe giving more from the public funds, or in terms of representation and reservation, is going to be more government freebies rather than taking the wealth away from the rich or increasing taxation. So these are things which get lost in translation. How are you going to keep explaining? You only have Rahul's headline saying कि जिसकी जाति उसका हक, and I am going to abadi uska hak, and I am going to redistribute resources and things like that. That you can keep waiting for things to be translated and explanations and debates like this. Who has the time or the energy to watch it?
All right.
We have BJP,
So let me cut through the chain, ladies and gentlemen. You can't have indirect taxes that are different for different people. It's not possible. There is no such thing. It can't be created. It's a figment of anybody's imagination. What are you going to do? Create a supermarket which is different? And everybody then has an I don't know, an iris scan that if you are worth 10 lakh rupees, you have to shop in this supermarket. It's not possible. Okay, so that's not going to happen. Where you can do it is, of course, indirect taxes. Let me get Sharad Kohli and then Ajay Dua in that order. Sharad ji, are we now spooking a large number of people in the middle class? Because the tycoons are not just Adani, the tycoons are also Tata, the tycoons are also Mahindra, the tycoon is also the Ambanis. They're also tycoons and they run large companies, and we are proud of them that they're building these big projects in India and the world. And let's be honest, you need the Infosys to provide you the jobs, you need the Wipro to provide you the jobs, and that's also a truism. But are we spooking them?
Good evening, Rishabh. At the outset, I would say let's not call them tycoons, for a moment. Let's call them wealth creators and employment generators. Let's not take names of Ambanis, Adanis, or Tatas or Birlas, because there is a diversified group like ITC, there is a diversified bank like ICICI, there is a diversified bank like HDFC where there is no single owner. Let's only call them wealth generators and wealth creators and employment generators. Now, a very interesting data, Rishabh, out of the 142 crore people that we are, about 50 crore of them, that is 500 million, they are involved in the main economic activity. That is, if I put it down in simple terms, that 50 crore people earn for 142 crore people. Of course, this 50 crore includes unorganized sector, it includes corporate sector, and it also includes that Sarkari Naukri, which is less than 1 crore, including the states. About 94 lakh people, as per the data that I have, work in the central and state governments all combined. So is the Congress aiming at creating 500 million government jobs? So the whole of the workforce is going to work for the government? Then what happens? Who's going to run the corporate? That's my first point. My second point is on the GST. Now you were talking, as you rightly said, it is impractical to make GST non-regressive. I'm putting down in technical term because the regressive term is given to a tax when the poor and the rich end up paying the same rate on the same product. So the thought that rich should pay something else on the indirect tax and the poor should pay something else on the same product is a very sweet thought, is a very nice thought in the perspective. But then how do you implement it? As you rightly said, are you going to make poor people's cards that you show the card? So what a businessman or middle class is going to do? Send your servant with his own card and go and buy a piece of bread for me, or go and buy bananas.
It's inconceivable. So but my question, Sharad Kohli, was different. Okay, my question was, should people be spooked? Because if we are talking about in extreme to the logical conclusion, it means that anybody whose income is above the national average should have the government tax it and redistribute it. That's the logical conclusion to communism. I'm not saying this is what the Congress is suggesting they are saying, but that can be taken the logical conclusion. Without the devil in the detail, should they be making sweeping statements on tax without spooking people?
Well, obviously not. I mean, I think they have lost their way completely because these thoughts, Mr. Sam Pitroda saying something else,
Which the Congress is disowned. They're saying that's got nothing to do with us. His personal comments.
Mr. Gandhi saying something else, the manifesto saying something else. So I think this itself is indicating of the fact that they really don't know what they want to do, except the fact that they want to stir the emotions of the poor people in this country, where they start feeling that we are going to get some khairat from the other people. And by the way, Rishabh, I interviewed a few poor people from villages, in fact, 100 of them, and you'll be shocked to know, they told me, Sahab, hame khairat nahi chahiye. It is better आप हमारे लिए कुछ opportunities create कर दीजिए. हमारे बच्चों को give us good education, give us good health.
People want a job, they don't want a handout, but they do want a job. So let's not kid ourselves. Are jobs a major issue? Yes, they are. Absolutely, they are. Okay, but let me get Ajay Dua in, because Ajay Dua, now there is an ideological war. There wasn't in the last election. There wasn't in the last election before that as well, because on economic policy, plus minus, there was a broad agreement on the future direction of India. Now we are being told it might be different, that there is going to be some methodology of redistributing wealth, a wealth survey. What does that really mean? How do we understand that without being afraid of it?
Rishabh, thank you for having me on your talk. I would like to just point out two things. One, let's not if we are talking about the ideology of the Congress, let's go by the manifesto, not what Sam Pitroda or even the General Secretary has said. I think the manifesto is a little better, more nuanced on various things than the oral statements, verbal statements of these gentlemen. That has been said earlier as well. If you look at the manifesto certainly is emphasizing employment creation, but employment creation can be very easily at the cost of wealth creation. What we have to be, certainly the employment has to remain the focus, but ways and means have yet to be found. And to my mind, and for some years in the government and otherwise, economics and other things, that we need to be somewhere in the middle. The answer is not capitalism, answer is not socialism.
Yeah.
Of the kind which Marx mentioned. We have to be finding a middle path which takes care of the requirements of the poor. And I'm totally against the idea of caste, religion, those being defined for distribution of wealth. Poor need to be helped. There is no doubt about it. Poor need to be brought, many more poor people, many have been brought up.
But Mr. Dua, isn't that what's exactly the system right now, that there is record tax collection that taking place? They go to government and the government says, okay, I'm going to use this money for free services, for Awas, for loans,
Right.
for insurance.
I was coming to that itself, that we have seen much greater public expenditure by way of consumption goods as well as invest capital goods in the last few years, facilitated by a buoyant economy and facilitated by greater tax collections. As well as there was a fair amount of stepping up in the FDI coming into the country. That means they have the outside money. Though I'm saying, yes, probably a little more emphasis, because the demand gets created at the base. Unless the demand is there, the industrialists or the rich people cannot be the wealth creators, if you like to call it that, as somebody mentioned. They need a demand. Their capacity utilization has to take place. If capacity utilization is not there, they don't bring in their money, as we have seen.
But Mr. Dua, then it boils down, Professor Nalapat, to the same, and it is an ideological conversation, that is the emphasis on increasing the size of the pie, okay, which is trickle-down economics, or is it that this is the pie that we have and the emphasis needs to be how do we cut it up and distribute it better? What should be the priority?
The priority is to have a larger and larger and larger pie.
Yes.
A smaller piece of a very large pie is much more than a very large piece from a very small pie. And that is very simple logic. Now, the fact of the matter is, a lot of investment is looking at coming to India because of this China plus factor, that they need to go beyond China for relying on supply, thanks to logistical difficulties faced by them, on over-reliance on China during COVID. And India has been looked at by several investors. Now, they would like a welcoming climate. If the investors are told you are exploiters, your assets are going to be confiscated. And that has been the bane in India. Under the laws in India, it has been so easy to confiscate private assets at a very low compensation or no compensation at all. Over the decades since the 1947, I mean, lakhs and lakhs of crores worth of private assets have been summarily confiscated. And now slowly, confidence is coming back that is a past era. You're not going to have that kind of confiscation. You're going to be given a fair chance and fair value. And let's face it, you're saying it is not the manifesto, it is saying this, it is only Rahul Gandhi. I'm sorry, it's not only Rahul Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi is the most powerful politician in the Congress party after Sonia Gandhi. He basically, what he says today, the party will have to do tomorrow. And that is a fact of life.
Yes.
So when he says something, we cannot just dismiss it as the views of some random individual. We have to give it the significance that these are the views of the top leadership of the Congress party. And it's motivated by a need to get as many votes as possible.
Okay, so then boils down, let me get Priya back into this. Priya Sehgal, why do it? Because the Congress is not ancient past, recent past has hanged on to its credo that yes, it was Manmohan Singh who changed the country as finance minister. Under Manmohan Singh, we were averaging near 7% growth. So our economic credentials are very solid. We don't necessarily have to come and say that we will come and do wealth distribution and do all of these things. So why get into it?
See, wealth distribution, I mean, apart from Sam Petroda's comments, I think, he often speaks on his own tandem in that sense. I don't think the other party rest of the party or the manifesto has spoken about wealth redistribution. But yes, this सबको include करना है, जिसकी जाति उसका हक, this whole social welfare model that Rahul Gandhi seems to have adopted is at odds with the liberalization policies of Manmohan Singh, but so is the Prime Minister doing it. So is the BJP handing out doles and freebies, which was totally not in keeping with his image as Gujarat Chief Minister. So end of the day, they have realized, whether it is the Aam Aadmi Party, whether it is the Congress, whether it is the BJP, everybody is now coming down to the kitna hum freebies denge, who will get more, who will be more economically inclusive. Promising jobs is a long-term promise. It doesn't work. People want an immediate now. The immediate now, whether they don't want handouts or not, handouts are something that gives you immediate gratification and gets your votes at the end of the day. And that is, every party is competing with the other. Congress is doing
there are two sets of people, ladies and gentlemen. One is the set of people who sees that very rich fellow having that very obscenely expensive wedding and says that's disgusting when there are poor people in this country. And there's another set of people who says, listen, I want to be that rich fellow, okay, and that's where I want to be 10 years from now, okay, and I want to build that company, and I want to have a billion-dollar company, and maybe then I'll choose to live a more humble lifestyle, and that's going to be my choice. But I want to be that person that has a lot of money. So let me get Mr. Kurian, who's been very patiently listening into all of this. Mr. Kurian, in that choice, with the credo that the Congress has enjoyed of being the economic liberalizers in this country, at least in the recent past, forget the 80s and the disaster that happened then, why go down this line?
Well, Rishabh, I've been listening to you patiently, and I hope that you'll offer me the same courtesy. I need about 180 seconds to put forward what exactly Congress has to offer for the people at large, other than the panelists. They have gone through the Congress manifesto. So for the benefit of your audience, let me just put forward a few points here. See, we all agree taxation forms the core of governance, and Congress party is very serious about taxation and tax reforms. So when we come to power in 2024, which we are very confident about within India bloc, so there are a few things that we want to make it simplified for the benefit of the people. First and foremost, in the last 10 years of the BJP NDA government, it's a typical case of taxation. It has gone berserk, and to share a few tax paid by the common person and the poor through regressive indirect taxes has increased significantly. Whereas the share of taxes paid by the corporates has decreased, which is exactly what we want to change. So we want to get the opposite of it, so that the poor people also benefit. Second is that despite the tall claims of increasing the tax base through demonetization and GST, India's overall tax to GDP has increased in the last decade. It has not increased in the last decade. So that is one thing that that is concerning and alarming. Congress will undertake a complete overhaul of India's taxation system to make it people-friendly and efficient, and incentivize private savings and investment. So these are basically things that Congress party plans to put into action when they come to power. The Congress party also plans to will enact a direct taxes code that will usher in an era of transparency, equity, clarity, and impartial tax administration and direct taxes. So these are main things that the Congress party also believes in carrying forward. Let me also put forward for the benefit of your audience that the Congress party is working on they want to stimulate the demand side, whereas the BJP NDA government is working on supply side. So we strongly believe that when we stimulate demand, it will create more room and opportunity for investments that will come into India.
But Mr. Kurian, as you know, economics is a complex beast. It's a really, really complex beast. Okay, so you are saying that listen, 53% or whatever percentage, which the correct figure is just north of 50, comes from income taxes. Income taxes are what generally salaried people pay. Okay, direct taxes, and the corporate tax rate within that is gone down to less than 50%. That can also mean that the capital investment is going, and therefore the taxation write-offs are also going, and that's a good thing because it generates employment. So like I said, economics is a complex beast, but you might be very gung-ho, sir, for many people who are investing in this country, many middle-class people who feel that, listen, the very rich guy can go offshore, take a Dubai residency, Singapore residency. It's me with my 1 crore ghar and my 20 bighas that you're going to come after, and I'm the one who's going to have to pay. What do you say to those?
Well, the Congress party has been very, very clear about, Congress will maintain stable personal income tax rates throughout its term so that people can, plan their investments and things like that for short-term or long-term period. And secondly, see, Congress party has, decided to go carry a survey of a socio-economic. That necessarily doesn't mean that, the Congress party is going to take away people's, property or things like that, and redistribute it. There is a way and mechanism that the Congress party has in place, which is a
Mr. Kurian, we don't know what that mechanism is. Nobody's been able to explain to me. And honestly, your best friend, maybe even your close family members, I can speak for myself. I don't discuss my finances with my best friends, not even my close family members. Okay, I don't think any of you want to discuss your finances, let alone with strangers, and let alone that with a government agent, other than what is your registered scheduled income on which you have to pay tax. Nobody wants to discuss what's in underneath their beds. Nobody wants to do it. But you are saying, yes, we want to do an X-ray into people's houses. I don't know whether that makes sense. Sharad Kohli, I'm out of time. Sharad Kohli wants to make a point and leave the last word with Mr. Dua as well. Sharadji, go ahead.
Well, our learned panelists from Congress, I see some contradictions there, because on one side you want to promote private investments and have a long-term view. On the other side, that redistribution of wealth statement is going to keep haunting you at all times. And he talks about consumption as well. So boosting the consumption, he should know that primarily Indian economy is made of 55 to 60% of consumption. It is only because of the buoyant consumption that we are today the 5th largest economy in the world. It is only because we've got a huge consumption base. All the international companies are coming here because of consumption. So, and once the redistribution happens, all of this is going to fall flat. That's the statement I wanted to make. Just study the economic impact of redistribution of wealth, Bishop. You will find so many answers there that all the tall claims being made by the Congress, they are going to fall flat if you test them out on an economic parameter issue.
Okay, the devil is always in the detail, as you know, Sharad Kohli, and we haven't seen the detail here. Mr. Kurian, of course, representing himself and not necessarily the party. Ajay ji, is it spooky when we start talking like this? I know it's political season, and things get said in extremis, and I appreciate that.
Here was a comment made about the direct tax code. For a long time, a direct tax code drafts have been ready, but the Congress government for 10 years, that it was just immediate between 2004 and 2014, had a great opportunity, but nobody finalized those direct tax codes, even because you wanted to have flexibility every year, and you kept postponing, saying that we'll take a view later on. Similarly, right now, talking about progressive tax system, we'll make it, is good economics, that everybody talks about regressive and progressive, but in the same breath, they have also talked about a stable income tax system. Stable income tax
and
system.
No increase in taxes, because the party says we won't increase taxes, but we'll have a progressive.
Exactly.
So like I said, the devil is in the detail. It's not making sense right now. And that's why it's spooky. You need it to make sense. And you need people, because political change can happen in a country, but you need people within this country who are investing and outsiders coming in to invest, reassured that there is a system in place that makes sense, that is business friendly. And business friendly, ladies and gentlemen, surely is people friendly. Okay, surely we are beyond thinking that government is the party that knows what best to do with our money. I'm hoping those days are gone. I'm really, really hoping that the government is not going to do an X-ray into my house, your house, come and decide what I have, what I can have, what I can't have. Your car is too expensive, the other person's car is too cheap, so you need to sell yours so he can buy a better car. I don't know what that is. Yes, and everybody is right. There has to be a balance, and that's the only thing that works. And that is what government job is, that the taxes we already pay, that they are not misused, they are not swindled, they are not lost in the system. They go to the poor people, because then, yes, that's where the consumption comes from. And if that doesn't happen, then you have the Great Depression. I'm hoping that these are going to be very serious, considered thoughts, not willy-nilly electoral promises that we'll have to deal with one way or the other in a few weeks. I'm going to thank my guests. We run over time already. See you in a minute.